Cultivating the mind is a key aspect of Buddhism. The main practice Buddhists use to achieve enlightenment is meditation. Other rituals like the tea ceremony and koan study also help the participant achieve some sort of mental awakening. Music in the Buddhist tradition is another practice that helps lead to enlightenment. From its inception, Buddhist music has become an integral part to the practice. It has followed Buddhism to every region and has influenced many of its practitioners. Music in the Buddhist tradition is not used for entertainment, nor is it used for recreation. The primary reason for Buddhist music is to recite the sutras. The sutras are chanted, and sometimes instruments accompany the chant. Chanting the sutras enhances memorization of them because Buddhism is primarily an oral tradition. For those who are illiterate, repetitious chanting can assist their learning of the teachings of the Buddha. It is unclear that the Buddha himself specifically approved of music. Some sutras, however, seem to allow for music and give detailed guidelines on chanting. The 10 Chanting Vinaya declares, "Hearing what you sing, 5 benefits are attained. There is no physical or mental fatigue. What has been memorized will never be forgotten. The voice will not deteriorate, and the verses are easily comprehended." Another sutra, the Sadharana Pundarika Sutra, states, "To sing in praise of the Buddha's moral integrity with a joyful mind is also the path to Buddhahood." These passages reveal that not only can music help with remembering the sutras of the Buddha, but music can also help the participant attain enlightenment. Because Buddhist music is identified only by the lyrical connection of chanting the sutras, it varies in sound from region to region. As Buddhism traveled to different regions, Buddhist music adopted the indigenous music already established in each particular region. Indian Buddhist music derives from earlier musical traditions, including the recitation of sacred Hindu texts, the Vedas. Buddhism then moved into China, and from there to Tibet and Japan. In Tibet, Buddhist high priests maintained that religion is sound. In Japan, Buddhist music is associated with the Shinto religion. Japanese early musical traditions include Shinto, so when Buddhism expanded to Japan, the traditions melded. While each region brings its own musical history into Buddhist musical tradition, Buddhist music is mainly connected with the teachings of the Buddha. The first traces of Buddhist music can be seen in early Hindu music. The origins of such music date back to 2000 BCE, with chants reciting the Vedas. Such religious chants were said to possess 5 basic traits: uprightness, elegance, clarity, were understandable, and were heartwarming. These musical characteristics are akin to the feelings that the Hindu religion sought to portray. When Buddhism began to spread throughout India, these same characteristics were incorporated in Buddhist music. The instruments of Indian music traditions were used to accompany the Buddhist chants. Such instruments include string instruments like the sitar, veena, and ravanastram, an early type of violin. There were also wind instruments. The harmonium, played with bellows, and various mouth and nose-blown flutes are among some of the wind instruments used. Finally, percussion instruments were used to keep a beat for the chanters. Some percussion instruments are played by hand and others by sticks. The instruments, though part of the unique Buddhist musical tradition, are not at the center of the music. The key to Buddhist music is the recitation of the sutras. The instrumentation is secondary. When Buddhism spread to China, Buddhist music invariably followed with it. In China, Buddhist music became known as Fan Bai. Fan Bai means the heavenly with harmony, and began around 225 CE. As the legend goes, Prince Zhao Shi, while on a journey, heard beautiful music descending from the heavens. Remembering what he had heard, he began to compose the first versions of Buddhist music, or Fan Bai. As generations passed down the tradition, it became incorporated with Buddhist ceremonies as well. With time, there came to be 4 types of Buddhist music. These are the stotras, gathas, dharansi, and japatra vitra kamarakana. The stotras are songs used to praise the Buddhist teachings. They stem from Hindu prayers that praise the aspects of God. The gathas are structured verses consisting of 4 sentences explaining the Buddhist teaching. The dharani are incantations similar to mantras. Japatadvitya Kamarakana are the intonations of 5 types of words: Fen Chibai, Fanbai, Su Shenbai, Fen Fanbai, and Dao Quang Bai. These were thought to achieve similar effects as mantras, focusing on the words to help with the attainment of enlightenment. With the subsequent spread of Buddhism from China to Tibet and Japan, Buddhist music also followed. With the spread of Buddhism into Tibet, Buddhist music became a conduit used to achieve compassion for all people through studying and memorizing Buddhist texts. The recitation of Buddhist texts aloud stems from early Tibetan animistic belief systems in place before the coming of Buddhism. These animistic religions were centered on the belief that there are spirits and gods inside all objects in nature. Thus, when Buddhism was introduced to Tibet, recitations of the texts were incorporated into Buddhist rituals. It was thought that through audible recitation of the text, the animistic spirits and other entities could benefit from the Buddhist teachings. Thus, not only are the practitioners of the rituals helped, but anything or anyone who chances upon hearing the recitations can become enlightened. A unique feature of Tibetan Buddhist music is multitonal chanting. This practice, which takes years to master, allows the chanter to recite the Buddhist text in 3 octaves at once. The extensive training for this type of vocal chanting is associated with the monks attaining enlightenment. Another unique feature to Tibetan Buddhist music is the insertion of meaningless syllables within the sutra texts. This practice is used to inhibit the uninitiated from learning the sacred texts. Not every sacred text is treated this way, but the practice is especially used for the higher mantras that novices must make their way up to. The instruments that accompany the chants in Tibetan Buddhism are slightly different from those used in Indian or Chinese Buddhism. For one thing, string instruments are not used at all. Only percussion and wind instruments are used to accompany the chants. The monks who play these accompanying instruments are known as the roll mo. The instruments used are treated with reverence. Not only are they used while ritual offerings are presented, but they are presented as offerings themselves. The instruments used are atonal, with the chants sung by the monks providing the melody. The instruments used by the roll-mo can be broken down into categories of where they originated. Instruments imported from India include wooden drums, handbells, conch shells, and ram's horn. Persian instruments include oboes and long trumpets. Tibetan Buddhist music also incorporates indigenous instruments. Most notably are trumpets and hand drums, both made from human bones. Buddhism was brought to Japan by Chinese teachers around 719 CE. It is no surprise then that Japanese Buddhist music was highly influenced by Chinese Buddhist music. However, as with the other regions, indigenous musical styles also influenced Japanese Buddhist music. Because the Shinto religion was already in place in Japan before the coming of Buddhism, Japanese music sounds similar to Shinto music. Shinto differs from Buddhism by the fact that there are no canonical texts. The Shinto chants involve prayers known as norito, or divine words. In Japan, Buddhist music was called shomyo and was to be distinguished from Japanese court music known as gagaku. Shomyo, like Chinese fanbai, is placed into categories. The Tendoku style was shortened Buddhist sutras sung in Japanese. The Bombay style was the recitations of entire sutras sung in Sanskrit. Unlike the Tibetan Buddhist musical tradition, laypersons were allowed to take a more participatory role in Buddhist chants and musical instrumentation. There were no attempts to fill the chants with meaningless syllables in order to hide the more secretive sutras from lay practitioners. Japanese Buddhist chants were supposed to be available to all. All scriptures in Japanese Buddhism were recited in chants, and every official Buddhist function was surrounded by such chants. The accompanying instrumentation of Japanese Buddhist music is less prevalent than Indian and Chinese Buddhism. Some of the instruments that accompany the Japanese Buddhist chants are indigenous stringed instruments such as the lute and the zither. The biwa, similar to a lute, and a koto, similar to zither, were imported from China. The most significant instrument, however, is the gong. The gong symbolizes both the beginning and the end of chanted sutras. The Chinese poet Han Yu once wrote, "Buddhist teachings are heard in every street, and bells and horns are heard at every corner right up to the palace gate." As Buddhism spreads out of Asia, Buddhist music will surely follow. With the spread of Buddhism to the West, Buddhist music is affected and has undoubtedly diversified. As with other regions, Western Buddhist musical traditions incorporate specific regional musical styles. Buddhist music not only melds song and music with the ideas of the Buddha and Buddhist traditions, but also incorporates the individual musical style of the culture it resides in. It is clear that Buddhist music is now an integral part of the Buddhist practice. Whether providing aid in memorization of the sutras or helping practitioners achieve enlightenment, Buddhist music combines spiritual tenets with beautiful sounds.